Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast interview. On today's show, I'm having the pleasure of speaking with Juan Flores. He's the Senior Director of Product Management at KBB. And today we're going to talk about service opportunities, and insights from the Cox Automotive family of technology partners. Juan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having us.
You know, Juan, everyone is trying to rub their crystal ball to figure out what next year looks like. We do know that used car prices are falling. We know that new car inventory supply is rising. We know that recession fears are there. Stock market's been having a hard time getting any momentum. Credit card debt is soaring. Before we talk about the specific topic of how KBB is helping dealers in their service drive and service revenue, why is it a great time to double down on their focus on fixed ops?
That's a great question, Brian. I would say that there's two immediate reasons. The first reason is our audience is looking for a dealership to assist them, right? So I would say number one is our KBB audience is saying, "Hey, listen, which local dealer can assist me with my recall information?" So that's a great time to reconnect with the audience. So I would say that's probably number one. The second reason is let's give the dealership a chance to build a sales pipeline and connect with previously defected customers, right?
Well, let's take the first one. And you and I were talking before today's interview, and you shared an interesting stat that kind of blew me away. And that was how many people a month are plugging in their VINs to see if there's an open recall. How many people are doing that a month on KBB?
Over 400,000 KBB users are manually entering their 17-digit VIN a month, Brian. And that speaks to the opportunity that obviously Cox Automotive, but the dealership can assist in addressing that vehicle owner's concerns. Over 400,000, Brian.
Yeah, and this is a wake-up call for all the dealers who are listening to today's podcast. Would you just write down a little note? Where on our website are we promoting or assisting consumers with recall? And for many dealers, there's not even a page on their website that would allow them to connect with someone in the dealership that could immediately help them. Let's take it one step further. A few years ago, you came out with the KBB Service Advisor product, which connected local dealers with consumers who had some service needs. Let's take this 400,000 people. If a dealer signs up for the Service Advisor platform, what happens? Let's just say I have a Honda. I'm here in Boca Raton. I come to you. I plug in my VIN. It has an open recall. What dealers that are in my local market would show?
Yeah, the closest paying dealer to your particular zip code would be displayed on kbb.com. And what we're doing in that particular scenario, we're giving the KBB user a chance to connect with you, the Honda dealer. And we have a variety of different ways. We redirect them either to your website. We allow click to call. They can submit a service or a recall lead. They can actually schedule an appointment if they're also a next time partner. But what we're doing is doing what Cox Automotive does best, and that is taking our audience and sending them over to the dealership. And that's what happens to the Service Advisor dealers. We connect them with that user that has an open recall.
And tell me a little bit from the Cox Automotive data warehouse. It seems to me with the limited number of new cars and the soaring values of used cars, are consumers holding on to their cars longer? And if so, doesn't this point to the fact that more and more recalls will be exposed to the original owner of the vehicle?
100%. Consumers, we've known this for quite some time. Consumers are holding on to their vehicles much longer. We also know that so to answer your question is we do know that for a fact that they are holding on to their vehicles much longer.
And so when somebody is exposed to a dealer in the service advisor portion of KBB and clicks to the dealer's website or click to call, that has to be a pretty strong ROI, right? They've raised their hand, they need help, they need to be connected with someone. Do you have any general ROI estimates, whatever the service advisor program costs a dealer? How do you, I would think since KBB is such a strong recognized brand, every dealer would want to be on it, but you have to sell it, right? Like anything else, your audience is unique, it has value, they're taking action. What type of return on ad spend to be in that program are dealers experiencing?
Yeah, obviously to be on the program, it's going to vary by market, right? It's a standard ABC market rates. And what I would say is in those instances, for those customers that have an open safety recall, they go into the dealership and they have some warranty work. And that warranty work could vary based on the recall. What I hear feedback on from dealers is, well, one, I don't need any warranty work. And I would argue that you do need warranty work because in 60% of the time it's accompanied with customer pay. So right. while I'm in there, right, and I'm getting the recall work, guess what? Can you please rotate the tires? Can you replace my brakes and rotors? So we are seeing a good amount of return in those instances where the recall issue is driving additional customer pay.
Listen, in my personal experience, Juan, every time there's been a recall, there's something else that needed to be done. So I'll back that up from my personal experience. One of the things that the service advisor also does is bring some price transparency. I'm just going to tell you a personal story that happened yesterday. I wasn't happy about it, but I purchased leased a Mercedes from one of my clients, and he shipped it down, and so we're in Florida, and there's 3 Mercedes-Benz dealers, and the service B light comes on the car, and Carrie says, "Hey, I'm taking my car for service." I didn't think twice about it, and she calls me up, by the way, this service B is going to be a little over $1,800. I said, "That's crazy. What type of service B would be $1,800? That's what they're telling me." I said, "Let me just text my friend who's a dealer." And he was like, "Yeah, we charge about $1,000 for that." And I'm like, pull right out of that dealership. She calls another Mercedes-Benz dealer, and he was like, "That's $1,500, and calls a third and said it was $1,200. Well, guess what? We go down to the dealer with $1,200, and she was having some problems with her back tire, and he recommended the back tires. The whole thing, the service B plus the tires and everything, was less than this first guy. It was very frustrating to me. I've never shopped a dealer for price transparency, but the dealer who is close to $1,900 as a consumer now, I'm never going to do business with them, since they were basically $400 higher for the exact same service, apples to apples. Are you getting any feedback that price transparency is becoming more and more important for service, and how can dealers leverage that?
So, Brian, I appreciate you bringing up that story. And lack of pricing transparency is the reason why dealers have a customer defection issue. So before we got into this topic, you said, hey, people are holding on to their vehicles much longer. And guess what happens? Those vehicles are not being serviced at the dealership after 5 years or 6 years of ownership. They move on somewhere else. And the reason they move on somewhere else is because of the issue you just identified, lack of transparency. And that is the number one reason why vehicle owners leave a dealership. It's not that they're not loyal to the brand, the Honda or the Mercedes brand. It's that they perceive that there's just this inconsistent pricing on the service lane. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to shop. And you're seeing that a lot. You're seeing the research tell us and inform us that. And that's one of the reasons why Cox Automotive jumped into this space is, hey, we've been doing such a great job of pricing transparency on new car, used car, trade-in value, KBB instant cash offer. This is a natural expansion into transparency on the service lane. So you're 100% spot on.
Juan, as you were saying that, man, I oftentimes when I'm on these podcasts, I have these kind of aha moments, and you just triggered something. Here's what I was thinking. Maybe the dealers here in this room listening to this podcast could wonder if maybe something triggered with you. There's been so much written about price transparency with digital retailing. Cox has been a leader in providing price transparency through the Cox digital retailing tools, and a consumer can start their deal online and come into the store and finish it, see the exact same numbers. And what did we find out? We found out that as an industry, we can pretty much have a 15% to 30% higher close rate of showroom visits when the same price and tools are used online that are being used in the store. I never really thought about the service pricing, and I'm wondering, maybe the service directors have been given a pass. Like maybe they haven't been invited into these conversations about price transparency. Maybe they're still working off the old playbook of let's bang the customer as hard as we can because, hey, if we can make an extra $500 because this person has no idea, let me just take advantage. And they are not understanding what that's doing to not brand loyalty, to your point, but to the loyalty to the store. To me, it just like opened my eyes. Is anybody coaching the service directors and the service pricing to be transparent and competitive outside of what KBB is obviously doing with Service Advisor? I don't know. I just haven't been involved in those conversations.
Yeah, so there's a lot there to unpack, right? Because I think we all have friends that are service directors, right, or service managers. I would say there's a couple things. We just launched the pricing transparency tool. It's called, the Kelley Blue Book Fair Repair Range. We had some dealers that raised their hands and say, hey, we want to be beta dealers. And I said, wow, you talk about, it brought me back to instant cash offer days of trade-in value transparency. And so Here we have these dealers that are saying, I want to be transparent in the service lane. So we integrated this widget onto their website. And to be fair, it's kind of buried on their website, right? It's not going to be on their homepage, but it's somewhere on the service tab. And in a matter of a couple of weeks, we had over 65 users that had to dig through and engaged with the pricing tool, with the service pricing tool. And this just validates that even though if you bury it in the service tab way down at the bottom of the fold, these users are really interested in getting this lane. So I give credit to these dealers, these beta dealers, who raised their hands. So in addition to being a service advisor dealer, Brian, from a product perspective, they also get this transparency tool. It's called the Fair Repair Range that they can integrate and install onto their website. And then, to your initial point, are these service directors and service managers really embracing or really having those conversations? And here's a tool that allows them to do that internally as a team. Yeah.
And it's so funny yesterday's experience, and it's so funny that today we're recording the podcast. If I look back at my service behavior, I've never price checked in my life.
That's right.
Bring the car in, get it serviced. Now, I will say that I've been pleasantly surprised with the service pricing from my local Honda dealer. But now that this happened, I don't think I will ever, other than an oil change, whether it's $35 or $45, to me, that's a rounding error. But for these scheduled bigger services, I think I'm always going to price shop, because to me, the three Mercedes dealers are all about 25 minutes away in different directions, right? So if I'm going to take a drive out of the house, that's why this fair repair range makes so much sense, especially for dealers who want to be competitive. They could market that. I personally never really thought about it. And I also think that I've never seen a dealer ad that says, look, there's many choices in this market to service your Mercedes. We are KBB fair repair price dealer. Check our rates before, servicing somewhere else. I haven't heard those type of commercials. Is that something, Juan, that could be more in the future?
100%, right? We just launched this beta program. We were out for about 30 days. It's now available nationally for any service advisor dealer that signs up. Also gets this widget, for lack of a word, that could be implemented onto their website. And so you could see the more progressive dealers begin to socialize and promote this range. And I want to be fair, right? Because any of your audience might be saying, hey, Flores, why are you guys into this part of my business? And I will be honest, the range that we establish is so fair to the dealer, right? We're just giving pricing context. So on a Honda Accord, right? Yeah, to replace the brake pads and the rotors, we have a range that says, $350 to $450 per axle. So the range is fair enough to the dealer, and it's transparent enough and context enough for the customer to feel, hey, at least I'm somebody setting my expectations before I walk in. So I think it's a win-win for both the dealer and the vehicle owner.
Yeah, I mean, go back to my story. I have no idea what a Mercedes-Benz B service should cost on a 2021 GLE 4MATIC. I don't know. I don't know. But obviously, my experience is almost in Pennsylvania, it's $1,000. In Florida, almost $2,000. There's something going on there, and I need to be a better consumer and understand. And I'm glad that we talked about that today. Juan, when you think of the Cox Automotive ecosystem, you're seeing activity on Auto Trader and KBB, now more and more service-related data and data mining. The Cox audiences are amazing and powerful. What's another trend that you believe that you're seeing from the data that dealers need to be focused on? Because just because you're in Kelley's team, you see a lot of interdepartmental data that really can help dealers better navigate the year ahead. What's another trend or reminder that you'd like to share with dealers who are listening today?
So something that's service related, and then I'll move a little bit closer to the used car inventory or used car prices. I would just say we're getting dealers that are raising their hands and say, hey, Flores, can I put a price on my actual on KBB.com? I want to put a price. Like you imagine, remember with the autotrader.com 20 years ago, where you had all these vehicles that were listed and there was no price there. Call the dealer for a price, and then eventually it took a long time. Then you saw price on the car. It's sort of the same thing. Dealerships want to say brake pads and rotor replacement, right? $299 for average 4-cylinder, etc. So we're getting dealers that say, go ahead and give a quote. I'm comfortable giving a quote. So we're starting to see some of that trend, and so you might see some of that in the years to come. I'm not saying in years to come, in the months to come. Specifically, some of the other data that we're seeing, and I think you mentioned that at the beginning of this podcast, Brian, is the Manheim's wholesale, value index is down double digits, right? And so we know that the used car market is still priced relatively high, but we see a double-digit decrease in the last 12 months.
And that is going to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff as far as used car operators. Somebody asked me this question the other day: what percentage of car dealers are excellent at managing their inventory, turn? And I say maybe at max 20%. There's a guy, Jason Rice, Lot Pop. He does a great job in coaching dealers. But I think everyone made a lot of money. Like, what do they say? All boats rise with a rising tide. I think it's time, Juan, right, for people to get back to the basics and really looking at their turn rate, especially since the number of cars that could be sitting on a dealer's lot could mean a relatively large financial loss in value over these last few months. Am I correct in saying that?
That's the expectation, Brian. The expectation is that as new vehicle inventory begins to increase, right, as the supply chain challenges have been addressed or are being addressed, right, there's a dealership here in Southern California, a Lexus dealership that I'm somewhat friends with, and he says, "Yeah, my new car inventory is starting to build up," and so shoppers that come into my site or come into my store are no longer looking at used car because the new cars they're available. So not only is the buyer passing up on the used car and going to the new car because of availability, you also have wholesale values that are beginning to decrease. So you do have a risk of loss in asset value, right, sitting right on the lot, right?
Yeah.
And if not managed correctly, I mean, these dealers know this very well. If not managed correctly, then that's going to be it's going to squeeze margin, and without getting into all the details, we know exactly what happens in that scenario, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure in 2023, the gross profits of dealerships or the net will probably look very different as more new cars come into the mix and less used car accelerated, or overvalued used cars prices come down. You mentioned something about new cars and it triggered a question, so I'm going to go completely off script and talk about EVs. KBB is an authority for information about cars. Do you have any data you could share on the increase or growth of queries or research on EV vehicles? It seems that for years it was pretty much Tesla and a few fringe. Now the number of domestic and import vehicles that are delivering for sale EV vehicles is on the rise. Things like total cost of ownership, battery life, these are all questions that have to be top of mind with folks that are going to be purchasing their EV for the first time. Can you tell us anything about EV searches, EV interest on KBB over the last year?
Well, I will say directionally, right, Brian, that there's been an ongoing increase in searches for EV information, especially out of our editorial team, as users try to understand exactly what does it all entail, right? What does owning an EV vehicle really mean? So you see a natural increase in that, especially in certain parts of the country. Obviously, in the state of California, there's an EV almost what appears to be every other car. There's an EV vehicle, but as this trend starts to spread across other large metropolitan areas, you start seeing this increases. But directionally, yes. And then most importantly, also is with the price of gasoline being where it is, there's obviously we're speeding up the demand in our opinion, right? Where users previously were not as interested in an EV. I think the circumstances of fuel prices has also shifted. Some looky-loos, right, going over and saying, hey, listen, what's going on over here with the EV market?
One of the points you made earlier, Juan, was that warranty work can help dealers build the customer pipeline. And my experience this week is I have 3 Mercedes-Benz dealers going forward. I know exactly where I'm going because that service reminder light went on. And as a consumer, I found a variance of about $600 on the same service. I'm assuming, Juan, that when you think of warranty work, recalls, and general maintenance, dealers need to be more conscious of what a fair market price is. They need to be more aware of what it does to their store loyalty. And then again, how do they increase the lifetime value of each customer? It has to be more aware of the total pricing picture, the total experience, the ease in which they do business. And it seems like KBB and Cox Automotive is right in the middle of that to provide the data to help them find the right balance.
A dealer principal should not be okay with losing customers after the vehicle is 5 years old. That, in my opinion, is not acceptable. And if you're losing customers strictly because of lack of pricing transparency, I would argue that a dealer principal or even a service director would argue that's not acceptable. And somebody, a dealership listening to this call, like, Flores, we already have our service lanes booked to 2 weeks in advance. Well, guess what? If they don't book an appointment with you, they're going to book an appointment with another dealership across the street, because we've been programmed over the last 2 years to wait for a couch to come in 6 weeks, for a refrigerator to be delivered in 8 weeks. We've been as customers, as consumers living at home for the last couple of years, right? Some more than others. We've been accustomed to these delays. So if they don't book out an appointment at your service lane 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, they're going to do it somewhere else. But I would say that losing a customer because lack of transparency is not acceptable. I'm going to make one other comment here, Brian. And this is not, I challenge a dealer principal or I challenge a service director. I just did this for my daughter's car. I went to Valvoline, Brian. I took my daughter's, she's got a 2019 Mazda CX-3. She's a college student. I'm kind of painting the picture. I said, can you please let me take your car to get it serviced? We went to Valvoline. Complete itemization, transparency, in and out, 15 minutes. I got the battery replaced, oil change, tires rotated in 15 minutes. Granted, it wasn't a full circle vehicle inspection, but that was the most open, pricing, transparent experience that I had ever been around, right? So I would challenge a dealer principal and a service director to stop by one of these locations or a Pep Boys. I'm not biased. I'm not promoting, but the point is, the service lane has competition from these independents, and they're doing a great job.
Yes, and Juan, I will tell you a similar story. I have a 3-year-old Honda Pilot. I financed it. It's paid off. I still only have 25,000 miles on it, so I'll keep for a while. I need new tires. And I was so impressed. I went to a local tire store. I pulled up, and I was so impressed at the speed at which they handled this. I've been watching their customers. They had all sorts of people coming in. They did more than just tires. And I was so amazed at the speed at which they moved. And I was like, man, this was a good just industry learning experience. And it backs up your point. We can never grow accustomed to saying, hey, I'm the Mercedes dealer. They have to come to me. I can pretty much charge whatever I want. We can't live in that bubble. And I think that our conversation today may be a reminder to some, hey, maybe it's time to sign up for that service advisor. I want to be in front of those 400,000 people a month that are looking about recalls. I want to be able to be fair and transparent and validate my prices with a trusted third party like KBB. And that total conversation of, if I want to increase the lifetime value of every customer in my portfolio, I have to keep them in service. I have to keep our brand promise in front of them, and working with KBB to ensure more existing customers stay with the brand, I think is very important. Juan, if a dealer had some questions specifically to you and just felt like, hey, Juan seems like a straight guy, like to ask him a question, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, I don't know how often this happens, but Juan.Flores at Cox Auto Inc. Or we have a B2B, we have a KBB B2B.com website where it's specifically set up for dealerships, and they could submit a lead. But yeah, I mean, ever since my trade-in marketplace days or KBB Instant Cash Offer days, I stay in touch with many dealers and be happy to talk to any of your audience, agree or disagree, right? And yeah, I'm coming at this from a product perspective. Any way that I can help, happy to.
Great. Well, Juan, thank you for your time today. And for the dealers who are listening to today's podcast, you should know that there are dozens of interviews online that you can listen to on Google Play, SoundCloud, the Apple Podcast channel, or you can go to brianpash.libsyn, that's LIBSYN.com, to listen to all the interviews as we get ready for NADA 2023 in Dallas, Texas. Just want to remind all our listeners, don't forget to stop by the Cox Pavilion and, more importantly, the KBB booth, and ask about the Service Advisor platform and the Fair Repair Range widget that could be put on your website to drive greater transparency. And don't forget to keep in mind that this May, the 2023 Digital Marketing Strategies Conference will be held in Austin, Texas, 2 Texas conferences in a year, and we'll be showcasing some of the latest digital marketing strategies for fixed operations as well. So don't forget to mark those 2 conferences. And as always, thank you for listening to our interview, and please share this conversation with all your friends who are running fixed ops departments and running dealerships to help them sell more cars and service more cars in a digital age. I'll catch you next time.